Calling the Wednesday, May 14th, 2025 Economic Development Commission meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. Tonight's meeting is being conducted both in person and online. Members of the public may attend in person, or the public may also watch this meeting online at burnsvillemn.gov/meetings or view us on Comcast Channel 16 or 859. The public can also join us on Zoom by going to zoom.us/join. More information is available on our meetings webpage and in the agenda. So let's move on to the agenda. The first item is to adopt the agenda. Do any members of the commission have any changes to the agenda? And staff, do you have any changes?
No changes from staff.
Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
And then can we get a vote to adopt the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstain? Okay. The agenda is adopted. Let's move on to approving the March 12th, 2025 Economic Development Commission meeting minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes from commission members or staff?
No.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All right, and all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
It's okay, great. That passes. So we will move on to our update on the GrowMN program from our Burnsville Chamber President, Jennifer Harmning.
Good evening. Thank you for taking some time out to hear this. I appreciate it. And thank you all for what you do for Burnsville, serving on the Economic Development Commission. It's a very important function for our community, and we appreciate it at the Chamber. So Grow Minnesota has been a partnership between the Minnesota Chamber, the Burnsville Chamber, and the City of Burnsville for about, I think we're going on our 5th year now, because we decided to start right in 2020, right? Why not?
Sure.
The Burnsville Chamber has partnered with the Minnesota Chamber since the inception, since the beginning, for over 25 years. But when Burnsville, the city was looking for a partnership in business retention and engagement, this seemed like a good fit for all of us to be working together. So that's been a great partnership. The first set of slides is from the Minnesota Chamber about the Minnesota economic outlook and the trends. Being that it's May, it's 2024 trends, so it may seem, we'll dip into some 2025 things, but you can see a lot of it's related to the workforce. And so the first is the unemployment rate in Minnesota, and the interesting comparison here between this slide, which shows the unemployment rate, the obvious spike in 2020, but the fact that in December of 24 we were really pretty much at exactly our pre-COVID levels. And if you look at the unemployed persons per job opening, obviously a spike in 2020, but there's a sweet spot of about 4% unemployment that usually dictates about 1-to-1 unemployed person per job. And so 4% unemployment is what we consider to be virtual full employment. It usually just means there's movement of people in jobs, but there's enough jobs for everybody. Not literally, there's other issues, but so we've been below that 4% for a long time. Probably about 10 years. And so we know workforce issues and all of that have been a big focus. So that trend continued in 2024. Looking at the total labor force, starting to tick up. That's a good trend. We like that. Obviously the dip in 2020, and we're creeping back, continuing to add employees, added 11,742 people to the workforce in 2024. The total hiring slowed a little bit, but it's still at pre-pandemic levels. And I just want to get to this. If we look at the monthly total employment, you see how these trends vary. And they were coming up at the end of the year. The interesting thing about that, I'm going to jump to the next slide, is the breakdown. When you drill down into those numbers, even though our total employment in Minnesota was going up, you'll see that there were certain, excuse me, there were certain sectors that were driving that. So we do have some losses in some sectors and some big gains in others. So that's this slide that talks about administrative support, manufacturing, management companies, wholesale. So you'll see those chunks of losses, not huge. I mean, administrative support and retail, the biggest ones, a little bit in manufacturing, but then you see the government and healthcare and social assistance are the spikes. And so when you put those together, we're still on an upward trajectory, but it just helps us understand kind of the moving parts within that.
Jennifer?
Yeah.
Question about that in the area of healthcare and social assistance specifically. Is that because of an increase in need, or is it because of a change in like ability to hire or compensation rates that made those types of jobs more appealing at the time? Do you have any
That's an
inclination?
excellent question. And my understanding is it's really the addition of jobs in those sectors. And you're probably right, it's probably a need-based. The demand is high, and the wages are not bad. I think people in healthcare and social assistance might argue that they're not what they should be, but they're better than maybe some of the other ones that are losing. When you look at retail administrative support and some of those things, if you could move into these other areas, that might be an upgrade. So yeah, that's a good observation.
You'll see like legislative approvals for like new social service programs come out, and then you'll see a huge hiring boom of those employees
That's
as well.
kind of what I was asking, is if we knew any documentation of something like that.
The first one I can think of is the Community First Services and Supports that switched over from just being PCA, and now they have to get a consultation done, and then they're doing that annually, and then PCA is now CFSS, Community First Services and Supports. So now there's a whole workforce of people who have to do basically PCA consultations every year.
And what was the timeline for that shift?
I just started in October
Of 24?
24.
Okay, so it might have been a bit of that, but it couldn't have
The
been
tail end there,
40,000.
part of that.
Just like the
Right.
first example that I could think of, but
Yeah.
they were probably in the same legislative session, like other things that got switched over, and then we had to hire more social service staff.
Yep, great.
I think,
I was just gonna ask the difference between the social assistance and the government, but it sounds like it's providers, like PCA providers and those types of,
healthcare and social assistance. It's a
Okay.
pretty broad category, but yeah.
okay.
Yeah, so lots of interesting data. Looking at our economic performance from 2020 to now, we've continued to grow and sometimes on pace, but the interesting thing is that we're not growing as fast as some others. And so and part of that is you see the unemployment numbers. Unemployment is so low that it becomes hard to grow. Like I said, once you get under that 4% unemployment, it's hard to attract new businesses or grow existing businesses because they can't hire people. So we're known for a great workforce here, right? But if you don't have enough of them, it's risky for businesses to expand or to locate here. The other interesting one, breaking down population and aging trends. Obviously, we're looking at this a lot. I'm old enough to be able to say they told us so on this. I can remember sitting there listening to the state demographer in the 90s, and they were talking about what we now call the silver tsunami. And they said, by the time we get into 2010, 2020, when all the boomers start to retire, we're going to have this crunch, because they know the numbers, they know the birth rates, they know all the numbers, and they've been telling us, and yet we were all surprised. The age 65 and plus age group grew by 45% between 2010 and 2022, and they expect it to double by 2075. So we're not done with that being such a big part. And that's when you look again at social assistance and healthcare and things like that, that's part of the push in that area. And we're not even close to over the hump on that yet. So the population and aging trends continue to drive a lot of our economic forces, and we have to just be aware of that in our decision making and all that. The state of the business climate, I don't know if you can read how, this was the first time, possibly in record, that the survey responses to Grow Minnesota in 2024 said that 56% of the respondents said that they believed the economy for them was worse than it was the year before. And it's interesting, I'll get into our local visits. Beth's giving me a little nod about what that experience was like for us going out and visiting businesses in 2024. But the manufacturers in particular expressed an unprecedented anxiety about the economy. Some of the concerns in 2024 noted in those surveys had to do with the just sheer volume of workplace mandates that they're trying to figure out and understand. There's always uncertainty in an election year. I mean, that's just across the board. Really doesn't matter, presidential election year. So you expect it. And so that was part of the mix, part of the workplace mandates. And then obviously we can talk about in 2025. We have some new uncertainties that are affecting our economy. So with that, it's interesting that the term that always comes to my mind year after year when we meet with these businesses is resiliency. They're amazing. Through COVID, through ups, through downs, they just pivot left and right, and they're like, okay, it's rough, but we got this. This is how we're gonna do this. It's truly amazing. It's inspiring. So they still tend to report expected growth in their near-term outlook. Their economic indicators remain stable. So there's a little kind of survey questions that we ask through this. New business starts continued to be up in 2024, and new technologies and industries obviously continue to pose growth opportunities for us.
Jennifer?
Yeah.
Do you have any data about any sort of a gender or any demographics around who is starting businesses?
I don't offhand, but that would be an interesting level to dive a little deeper into that. I know it exists, I don't have it offhand, but yeah, that'd be good information.
Did we get any of that when we were talking with the?
Natalie?
Yes, with Natalie. Did we talk about that? Because it sounds familiar, but I also might have made that up.
No, she broke it down into who was minority, women-owned, or veteran-owned, I believe, for her categories.
So there were some.
Yes.
Yeah, the data is definitely there, and I'm sure Natalie with her clients, she can give you a good flavor of that. Yeah, so we still have a diverse and innovative economy. Like I said, high value per capita income and hardworking, right? We have an educated and skilled workforce. We just don't have enough of them. Innovation, 7th most patents per capita in the US. Wow. Corporate hub, we still have a lot of corporate headquarters here in Minnesota. And a diverse economy spread across all kinds of sectors. And the beautiful part as we segue into our Burnsville visits is we're really a microcosm of that here in Burnsville. I meet with a lot of my counterparts, as I'm sure you guys do in cities too, and Burnsville is a unique situation with the breadth and depth of business and industry that we have here, which is very cool. So, on to our local visits, the fun part. So our local visit summary, just starting with how we plan. So we meet quarterly, city staff and myself, to evaluate kind of our list of potential businesses, what our purpose is, what we're trying to accomplish, what our results are. But once a year, we really sit down, okay, what's our goal? What are we really trying to accomplish? And we continue to confirm that building relationships is our number one. That's for the chamber and for the city. It's putting a face to the city and the chamber for our businesses, letting them know if they have an issue, who to come to, and building those personal relationships. Identifying issues is a close second. So if they've got a concern, if they've got something that they need help with, that we can support them or find them the right connections for that. And then offering connections and resources. So sometimes I would say it's almost 50-50, whether it's like signs or something that, you know, that Beth can help them with, connect them with the right person in the city, or if it's, you know, I need to meet so-and-so from this business and I can maybe help introduce them to somebody or get them connected through the chamber. So that's That's a really fun part, I think, of our visits, and it seems like we don't leave a visit without making some connections. The observations that I will share, and I'd love to have Beth jump in if she wants to add or add any commentary to this, but I lead with a COVID hangover, okay? So bear with me on this one. But 2021 to 2023 were our bounce back years. Depending on the industry, they were bouncing back at different rates and different times. But between 21 and 23, there was kind of a high. There was kind of a like, yeah, we're doing great, like going gangbusters. This is awesome.
Entrepreneurial adrenaline.
A little bit, but there literally was a lot happening. Their business was growing. They were getting more clients. There were things happening. Not every single business, but just I'm saying overall, that was the vibe of the people we were meeting with. My business is growing. I can hardly keep up with the customers. I can barely hire enough employees. Things that was like the post-COVID recovery was pretty good. In 2024, it was a little more reserved, I would say. Things had slowed. They were okay, but they were working a lot harder to get the same amount. They weren't like easily bringing in the clients. People weren't just showing up on their doorstep. But again, the persistence, the resilience, they all had a plan. They knew what they were doing. So that was always inspiring. Rapid leadership turnover. We at the Chamber cannot keep up with the turnover, and that is both ownership changes and management changes. So it seems just keeping our database up to date is like a full-time job. But our businesses are selling, and we're having to find the new owners and meet with the new owners and track them down. And then the management is changing, a new GM, a new operations person, a new this, a new that. I will say that we did decide that meeting with the new managers of some of these places was the funnest part, because they're the fresh, like, they're the most happy, perky, like that was the highlight of our year, I think, was some of the new managers of some of the properties and some of the businesses. As I mentioned, the election year uncertainty, I think people don't necessarily say that, but that's just like an underlying, there's always this like, yeah, we're just gonna hang out and just kind of see what happens, you know?
So Jennifer,
yeah.
you know, you're saying that you do this on a quarterly basis.
I meet with staff on a quarterly basis. Our goal is, I'm gonna get to the numbers in a minute. Our goal is always to meet with about 25 businesses a year.
Right. That was gonna be my question, is how many, you know, because you start talking about COVID hangover, rapid leadership turnover, election years uncertainty. But if it's only a few businesses, is that really statistically valid?
Right. This is not a statistical exercise, if you will. This is more our experience out in the community when we're meeting. These are our observations.
And how are the businesses chosen?
Those are the meetings that we have, and we go through an exercise of everything from, they might be new chamber members, they might be businesses that the city's like, hey, we haven't met with this business for a while. Same thing with the chamber. We try to vary the industries, the size of business, things like that, so that we're getting a representative. I would provide the list, but that's confidential information, so I can't like just shoot you a list of who we met with, but it does range from, you know, a one-person operation up to larger companies, and everything from retail to healthcare to business and everything in. So we try to make sure there's just a good mix. The hardest thing, which I'll get to actually, is getting them to set up the visit.
Getting them to schedule you. So it's only.
Getting them to respond.
So it's only you and Beth.
Generally speaking, it varies occasionally, depending on the visit. And yeah, but
Yeah.
90% of the time it's me and Beth.
There's been times where if I've had a conflict, or if it makes sense to invite a member of our police department or a member of our fire department, depending on the type of business, a lot of those business owners will find a high value in that. Or, you know, if there's a construction project, on occasion our building official will join us to kind of help answer those questions. And so when Jennifer and I are setting up these visits, we try to be mindful of things they might want to talk about or what we assume they might ask us, and then we try to be prepared for that. Or if not ahead of time, definitely follow up with them after and provide those connections.
Exactly.
Well, you know, the Lakeville EDC started doing that earlier this year. I think it started it because of you and Jennifer. But what they did is they had two different teams, and they always had, you know, somebody from the city, somebody from the chamber, and somebody from the EDC commission. So 3 people, but they had 2 different teams, so they could cover more businesses that way.
Yeah. And I do just want to clarify before I hop off this slide, the election year uncertainty obviously is not a political statement. Like I said, that's an every 4 years thing. It's just everybody from, I would say, like July through November just kind of goes, yeah, we'll just, yeah, kind of see what happens here. Questions, and a lot of questions answered. That could be anything from questions about the chamber, questions of what's happening at Burnsville Center, what's happening with the schools, what's happening in economic development. I have a zoning question, I have a sign question, I have a, you know, whatever. And so, as Beth said, we try to prepare and have some answers preloaded, but there's always a general follow-up that I send that includes Beth that says, thanks for the visit, here's some links for you to follow up, and here's Beth's information, and then she follows up if there's a city question, and yeah, so kind of a little process. Opportunities and resources made available, again, chamber, city promotions, events, etc. A lot of times, Beth will, you know, there's so many great community events that the city does, and a lot of times the businesses are interested in learning more about that and how to get involved. Same thing with the chamber. I've gotten AM coffee break hosts out of the visit, or, you know, things like that. So connections made, as I mentioned, with other businesses, city departments, other agencies, sometimes other governmental agencies if it's not like a city thing. And numbers. So this is, since the program started, these are the number of visits we've done each year. So 130 visits by the end of 2024. Super exciting for us. And it may sound paltry, you know, it may sound like, but it's, you know, we just keep plugging away. It really does. It takes at least twice as many, I have to reach out to twice as many businesses to get that number of visits. And it generally takes 2 to 4 outreaches per business to get 1 appointment set up. So it's not a light duty kind of thing to make it happen.
Do some of them jump on it though? Like, do you ever get somebody who's like really interested?
Every once in a while. Yeah, every once in a while. Those are those new managers I was telling about. Sure, yeah, I'd love to meet with you. Okay, great. We're like, yes, someone who wants to meet with. No, I mean, I think everybody, think about in your home life and your business life, whatever, it's like somebody wants to meet. I'm sure they want to sell me something. I'm sure they want, you know, what do they want from me, right? So it's how do we get through that and say, no, we want to come help you. Like, and that's when I first started back in 2020, there was this lengthy email and this lengthy description. And now it's like, hey, you know, we'd really like to come and meet with you and see how we can learn more about your business and support you and your team. Are you available on this date and time? Like, that's what we've gotten down to. So, but yeah, so that's fun. And a little sneak peek, since it is May already, we've had 5 Grow Minnesota visits and 10 ribbon cuttings. We are on track for a record number of ribbon cut. I mean, we had a lot last year, and they're not slowing down anytime soon. So there's kind of a mix of sometimes a visit leads to a ribbon cutting, sometimes a ribbon cutting leads to a visit. And Travis actually had a great suggestion last year. Now we're trying to time it so that about 6 months to a year after a ribbon cutting, we automatically reach out and follow up again and see how things are going. Yeah, so that's kind of the quick update. Other questions or anything that, Beth, that you want to chime in on from our?
I mean, we can wait for questions, but I guess we could use this time to have a call to action. If you are a business owner, you know a business owner who would love to spend 45 minutes to an hour chatting with Jennifer and I about Burnsville and ways that we can support you or support them, resources to connect with. It's very casual. My kind of spiel that I always say in the visit is I want to be the friendly face to our businesses at City Hall. So I've gotten questions about how do I get a car to be able to drive into the mall, to how do I get CPR training for
Batmobile.
a DeLorean.
Close. You were on the
Very
right train of
close.
thought.
And so the questions that Jennifer and I get span a wide range of topics, and more often than not, I'm probably not the person they need to talk to, but I will find the answer.
Makes it happen.
Did a DeLorean drive into the mall?
It did, yes.
No damage. It was,
On
we
May
wanted
3rd.
it to drive into the mall.
It drove into.
Yes.
Not yes.
Jennifer, I mean, certainly the details of those meetings that you're having are confidential, but if you're getting, or if you have ever received, generalized feedback that may be consistent across multiple different businesses, feedback on, you mentioned like our schools or building codes or something of that nature, is there a feedback loop for those type of comments, even in a generalized fashion, to come back to the commission or other,
We'll take them directly back. There's been, let's say, tenants who might have questions about the, is the outside of our property, the way our building owner did it, is that actually legal? And might have someone from, the city drive by and check it out. And so we definitely follow up, no matter how specific or how general it is.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. We, I say like, we.
The collective.
Yeah. Yeah, generally, as Beth said, we want to get to know our businesses, because the more we know about them, the more we can support them and help them and bring people like you information about what they might need. And so that's really our goal, is to get to know them, and so that they do have the connections, but also so that we understand maybe what their challenges are, or what their, what would help them.
Is there some sort of way for a business to request like this sort of visit?
That is an excellent question. We have a connect something on our website, but I have to go back and look and see if it's as functional as it should be. That's a really good point.
Makes me wonder if we're called to action, where we should send them.
Yes, thank you. I will follow up on that. I'll get you guys something. An excellent question.
I will say, for business owners who are thinking about bringing their business to Burnsville or wondering about staying here, I've worked in a lot of different cities in the metro, and I've never seen a more synergistic environment between the official chamber, the city staff, what goes on at the school district, like the communication there and the relationships with decision makers and people who could connect and deepen, relationships or functional work in the city is really strong. And you don't have to be a paying member of the chamber in order to tap into that. It's just one of the ways. But it's, when I compare to, probably a half dozen other cities that I've worked really tightly with, and this one is above and beyond.
I appreciate that feedback, but also the partnerships, because
Yeah.
it takes everybody to
Yeah,
be willing
everybody-
partners.
Yeah,
Yep.
everybody has to buy into the strength of that relationship to keep it strong, and here they do.
All right, do we have any other questions for Jennifer? Thanks for the update, Jennifer.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
We will turn it over to Beth Weber, our Economic Development Coordinator, and Travis Bistido, our Deputy Community Development Director.
All right. Thanks for being here tonight. Travis and I are excited to show you what we've been working on since you last saw the Economic Development Strategic Framework. Last September, we kind of showed you the data behind what we were working on and some draft objectives, and we've made a lot of progress. So if you'll recall, the purpose of our strategic framework is to guide our work for the next 3 to 5 years. Our previous strategic plan was implemented in 2019, and it's time for a refresh, something brand new. So the goal of this is to attract new business investment, enhance our competitiveness, and help people understand why Burnsville is a great place to own a business, to support our local businesses, and to support our workforce as well. So through this process, we've received council direction several times, and their strong preference was that we engage with the community, and that was our preference as well. And so we have engaged with all of you, with the chamber, with Experience Burnsville, the school district, commercial real estate developers, local realtors, a wide array of people. We've had online surveys, open houses, a lot of different avenues for people to provide feedback about Burnsville and about their experiences here. So that is something that has been really important to the city. We wanted to update it with current data. And so if you'll recall, we hired Stantec to do a full housing and commercial property inventory and to help us, really dive into the details about the demographics and our local economy and the different industry sectors that we have, so that we have new and fresh data to help inform this plan. We also wanted this plan to narrow the focus and add specificity. So our previous plan was quite broad in some areas, and the goals didn't necessarily allow us to see success in the time that it was intended for. Some of those goals were very valuable goals, but take much longer than maybe the 5 years that we had anticipated. And so we have been working to finalize the framework with these strategies, and we presented those to council recently, and we're excited to show you those tonight. We feel that this is right size for Burnsville, right size for the staff that we have, and right size for our community and who lives and works here. It does go above and beyond the usual day-to-day phone calls and things like that. But as I said, it is specific, and it's going to be really actionable for the staff that we have, and it is going to lean into the strengths of Burnsville. Ooh, now I turn it over to Travis.
Thank you, Beth.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, good evening. So like Beth said, we worked really hard to take the data that we got from the Stantec report and use that to customize our strategic objectives here. So this is very Burnsville specific, and like Beth said, it's also highly actionable. So we tried to kind of move away from some of the aspirational goals that were in the old plan and to things that we could implement within that 3 to 5 year period. So what we've landed on are these draft objectives, strategies to achieve those objectives, and then action steps to hit those strategies. And what that has resulted in is basically a checklist of things that we can do. A lot of it is low-hanging fruit that other communities have put into place, where we can try to move the needle in terms of our economic development goals, touching businesses, and creating new growth. So where we landed with our strategic objectives, we had 6 initially. I think the last time you all saw it. We really tried to consolidate that and boil that down to 3 core mission goals. The first is to enhance our strengths, focus on where we're strong, and Burnsville has some very unique strengths that I personally was not aware of until we completed that Stantec report and started digging into it with our consultant. So focus on those strengths and try to ignite new business growth around those strengths and around other core business areas. So that's objective 1. Objective 2 is to really target, Burnsville is a fully built out community. We don't have a lot of redevelopment opportunity with the exception of perhaps the mall. So target redevelopment opportunities and work hard to develop what few development opportunities exist in our landscape. And then strengthen our economic development partnerships with the community and with all of you and all of the stakeholders that helped craft this plan. So circling back to that first objective, enhancing our economic strengths and igniting new growth. The first 3 strategies that we've identified here if you recall from the Stantec report, and if you haven't read it, that's okay. I would recommend taking a little bit of time, going on our website. It's linked on our website, and taking a look at it. One of the things that makes Burnsville really unique is our industrial property portfolio. We have kind of mid-scale, low ceiling height industrial properties, but a lot of them, and they're in relatively good shape. And if you look at the occupancy rates, they're extremely high. Those are in-demand locations and facilities where new business and growing business wants to continue to do their work or grow their operations. So one of the things that we feel like we need to do is work on strengthening those industrial core areas. And what we mean by land use preservation is potentially creating an overlay district in those industrial land use areas and also medical land use areas. And the goal there is really twofold. If we were to create an overlay district, we would better understand from a staff perspective, what are all the businesses that exist in that overlay district. And we can use that then to market to other new business that perhaps wants to move up from New Ulm or something like that and is looking for a place close to the metro. We can say, hey, here's all of these businesses that have chosen to work in Burnsville. Perhaps they provide a service that is useful for your manufacturing, and use that as a marketing tool for folks that are maybe looking for that industrial or medical use space. The other piece of this is perhaps we could explore using that overlay district to protect those critical economic engines that we have in Burnsville. So whenever we have a development application come in through kind of normal channels, perhaps it's a school or a church that wants to go into a residential property, we could create at least a flag. And one of the ideas that we've talked about is bringing proposals like that to this body and have you all weigh in on, do you think this is a good idea? Should we convert this industrial space, which is one of those economic drivers in Burnsville, to a new type of land use? And you make the recommendation to the city council on whether or not they may or may not want to support that. So those land use preservations is a critical, I think it's a critical strategy for enhancing where we're strong. We also, if you look at the Stantec report, it clearly points to an affordable housing shortage that we have in Burnsville. Folks that do a lot of those manufacturing jobs, those warehouse jobs, those medical industry type jobs, they don't earn enough income to pay for rent or housing in Burnsville. So we deeply need to work on supporting workforce housing wherever we can and wherever we have opportunities. And we're going to talk about it later in updates, but the city now receives a 0.25% sales tax. Most metropolitan cities in Minnesota receive a 0.25% sales tax to support local affordable housing aid, and we can use those dollars now to create more workforce housing. And that's a challenge, I think, to you all and to our council on how we might want to use those dollars to support workforce housing to fuel those core industrial areas.
Travis, I have
Yes.
a question about that. Is there any inclination if the workforce that works in Burnsville can't afford to live in Burnsville? Do we know what cities have a little bit better housing affordability? Who's doing it better than us?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, that's a great question, and actually it's one we don't have a great answer to. Our instinct, and I think kind of the rule of thumb in community development, generally speaking, is people commute. So they might live in Elko or Medford and are commuting up 35 to come in and work in Burnsville. But we don't have great data on where those communities are. I would say that the entirety of the metropolitan area has the same challenge.
Yeah.
And actually, Dakota County just recently conducted a similar study to the Stantec report, and it basically said the same thing. We all need to produce more workforce housing.
Yeah.
So-
And there's a lot of work going on at the legislature considering how to incentivize or improve the functionality of getting workforce housing approved.
Absolutely. Yep, that's good work.
But then the 0.25% sales tax, that's only for, the 7 or 11 county metro area, correct?
That is.
So, I mean, if it's down south, they might not get that kind of money.
Correct. There's another program that they have access to, but it's not the same pool of funds. But that is the 1/4% sales tax is it's a sizable chunk of change. It's currently estimated to be $800,000 this year for Burnsville, and is likely to follow kind of the sales tax revenue as it continues to climb over time with inflation and continued business. So that's a huge new tool in the toolbox that the council, will have access to in supporting workforce housing.
As long as we keep importing things and being able to buy things and paying sales tax on them.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, yes, I think that's fair to say.
But also, where are we gonna put the additional housing? I guess that's
Yep.
the question I
Yeah,
have.
the struggle is density is kind of we're a fully built community, and if we want more housing and we want to give folks the opportunity who already work in Burnsville and want to put down roots in Burnsville, density unfortunately is the not unfortunately, it's the only answer, and that potentially can change the character of a neighborhood. So
Right.
that's the conflict that we're all kind of up against.
And infrastructure, if we have more people living here, we're gonna need more police officers and more firemen and
Sewer and water,
everything.
roads.
Yes,
Yep. There's a whole host of other
issues.
issues that come along with that, yeah. So still within that same objective, the other strategies that we have included thus far is we really need to do a better job of monitoring and marketing those existing commercial and industrial spaces. So what is currently out there right now? What is coming up? Whose lease is coming to an end? What are the plans for that business? Where do they intend to go? What are they looking for? So we need to be more on the front end and be more proactive around reaching out with businesses and finding out what their needs are and trying to do whatever we can to get them to reinvest or stay in Burnsville. And then the last strategy within this overarching objective is to continue to explore and develop our own economic development tools. So currently, the Economic Development Authority has budgeted a portion of our levy dollars to support a couple of smaller housing programs that already exist within the city. Those dollars are budgeted through the end of 2026. But after 2026, those dollars are freed up, and potentially we could use them to create some new economic development tools, like a facade improvement program for warehouses or for perhaps strip malls or something like that. Some tools to encourage businesses to stay and then redevelop and reinvest in Burnsville. So those are our 5 strategies within that objective. The next objective is focusing on redevelopment and development opportunities. So one of the things that we're recommending is that we really double down on brownfield identification and cleanup. Burnsville has a long history, and we know there are a number of sites that have challenging environmental conditions, but we really don't know the breadth of that whole portfolio of properties across the city. So we've already had initial conversations with Dakota County about doing a comprehensive brownfield assessment of the whole county to know what we have and what we really need to address to support redevelopment opportunities in the not too distant future. And then we also should consider exploring creating programs specific to commercial and industrial and medical districts. Those areas where we have strengths now, and that the Stantec report has told us that's where you're uniquely strong compared to Lakeville or Farmington. Perhaps create city-funded support programs for those industries intentionally. And then also consider developing a long-term use strategy for surplus city-owned land. So this is, again, some of that low-hanging fruit that we haven't really capitalized in the past, but the city owns a number of parcels that are underutilized. We're already in the process of selling the old fire station by Costco and a long-term vacant parcel that we acquired for a gas station back in the 80s, if you could believe it, on the corner. What did I say? Fire station. Fire station, not a gas station. On the corner of Portland and South Cross. So we have a host of other properties that we should look at, and we should come up with a strategy on how we could turn those over to the private sector for additional development.
Beth, was that property at Portland and South Cross, was that maybe 4 years ago that there was some proposal for housing there and that didn't go?
Correct, yes.
Yeah,
They
okay.
withdrew.
Yeah, I knew that all sounded very familiar.
You've heard that one before.
Yeah, I've looked at that chunk, yeah.
Yeah. We need to look at all of those chunks. Other strategies in this bucket of work supporting redevelopment and development opportunities is we should do the same for our privately owned properties. So I'm relatively new to the city, but I also know that we do have some underutilized vacant parcels that are currently not being developed, and we don't really know why. So this would be a matter of reaching out to those property owners and saying, what's the holdup? How can we help? How can we get encourage some new investment in these particular properties? Whether it's selling the property or hooking you up with a developer, there are some underutilized portions of land within the city that are privately held, and we don't have a strategy around those. The last two strategies within this objective is to look at our internal process. So when we have a development application come in and works through the development review process, that it's as efficient as possible. What I would like to do personally is to make it as easy as possible to do business in Burnsville versus Bloomington. Look at our process and make it as streamlined as it can be so that folks want to do business here. And perhaps we can do our work more efficiently and reduce redundancy and increase efficiency wherever that may be. That's not something that we've done in recent years, holistically. And then lastly, we want to continue to assist developers with any environmental remediation projects. Beth has worked on the Capstone project, which has been wildly successful. We want to continue to do that work whenever those opportunities come forward in the coming years. And then the third bucket of work is, I would say, of the three buckets, this one is a little bit more common in other economic development plans or strategies, but it's really about leaning into those partnerships. So working with the local and regional entities that we already work with and those that we haven't established connections with previously. So trying to be out in the community more than we have and collaborate and work with not only governmental agencies or other municipalities. This also includes industry itself. So Buck Hill is an example. Like, we need to lean in and strengthen our relationship with Buck Hill. And then the second strategy in there is trying to collaborate and coordinate with neighboring cities as well, so that we, as we develop our bigger projects across the city and we work on our comprehensive plan, that we're coordinating with those neighboring cities so that we're all kind of working towards a larger goal. And, good things that happen in Savage do bleed over into Burnsville, and we reap those benefits. And there's a symbiotic relationship there that we should capitalize on as much as we can. So that's where the framework is in its current state. It's been reviewed by the council, and they're in support. Our next steps are to reach out to the community, but we wanted to bring this before you all tonight to get your direct feedback. We'll also communicate with you separately so you can provide additional comments in the future. But are there things in here that are missing? Does this meet your expectations for a 3 to 5 year economic development strategic plan? Are there other concerns?
I have a question that I'm going to try really hard to ask coherently, and so this is a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, but the trends that we're trying to address, they don't seem like they're going to stay static. And so my question would be kind of to you all as well. Does it seem like, to you and to the commission, does it seem like this plan is going to make a dent in it, given the fact that the challenges are just going to continue to get more challenging? Just trying to look at it not from the light of these are the problems right now and these are going to be the problems for the next 3 to 5 years, but anticipating that the problems will get more problematic over time. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Coming out of my mouth?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, that's a great question and kind of a philosophical question. we cannot rapidly change the market, right? We're not going to have that impact. But I do believe that communities like Burnsville, or municipalities in general, do have the ability to work on the fringe and gently, slowly steer the ship in one direction or another. You know, each business that we bring in, each ribbon cutting, each new building that's constructed, and we permitted $244 million worth of new investment in Burnsville last year, our building inspection team did. All of that slowly over time makes a difference. But a lot of it is we have to be reactive as well, and that's why these plans grow stale after 3 to 5 years. So we'll probably be revisiting this in 3 to 5 years and say, maybe we don't need that anymore, and perhaps we should be focusing here. But I do believe that working on the fringe and steering a little bit can make a difference. And that one business that comes in, that's somebody's legacy, and that's an opportunity for a new person moving to Burnsville to build wealth. And I think it's even though we can't change the whole marketplace, I do think it brings a lot of value to the community.
I just wonder, have y'all seen any of these sorts of initiatives make an impact before in your experience? Or are we kind of just guessing that it will?
I've seen the kind of strong relationships that are the goal of this deliver retention. Anecdotally, any of the businesses that I've been familiar with when they were in a decision point and one of the options on the table was leave Burnsville, if they had a strong relationship with either people at the city or people at the chamber, they stayed. They didn't leave. So many elements in this are about sort of being the most aware of people in their changing points and making sure they're the most connected to intentional support. So I can see that being really useful. Does that address that enough or not enough?
It's sort of, I guess, thinking about it a little bit deeper as to what my actual question is, I think I'm not questioning whether any of these objectives are a good idea. I think they totally are. I guess my question is, do we have any sort of deeper projections for the actual potential return on our investment of time and energy into these objectives? Or are we just saying these are good things we should do? Or have we actually mapped out, if we do this, this is the outcome that we expect? Because that just feels like an important thing to have when we're delivering why we're, investing time and energy into something like this.
Yeah. Madam Chair, Commissioners, I would say it's a little bit more of the latter. We've intentionally chosen objectives and strategies that we feel like we can move the needle and make some level of change in the next 3 to 5 years. But some of that is taken on faith. I think like the overlay districts it's somewhat unique, but it's not a new idea, and other communities have seen successes in that. Developing a surplus land strategy for the city-owned land and privately owned land is not something that's normally done, and I don't know that we could find any data behind it as to how effective it is. But so I think we have a kind of a combination of things that are known to move the needle and things that are a little bit different, a little bit Burnsville specific, that we want to try to see if it does have an impact. What we should be doing is trying to document and collect some data behind it so we can report out on it in 3 to 5 years and say, here's why this didn't work and here's what we did see over that 3 to 5 year period.
Yeah, I think that piece of these are the objectives, but more specifically, what are the actual outcomes that we want to see so that we can actually measure whether we were successful at it or not, because it seems a little broad to me. And so I'm just picturing us talking about it again in 3 to 5 years, and how do we actually say whether this was successful or not? You're going to be able to argue it either way, and I think it'd be nice to be able to say more concretely, did we achieve what we wanted here? Because we would need to know exactly what we wanted to achieve at the outset.
Yes.
In order to be able to determine that later.
It's a great point, and I think, for example, with the overlay district concept or idea, once we were to create the overlay district and we would say, okay, there's 218 businesses, industrial businesses in this industrial park or this medical area, our goal is going to be to grow that by 10% or whatever whatever the number is within a certain period of time. And those are individual tasks and steps that we would bring before likely this body and certainly the city council before we would move forward with them. And I would imagine establishing what that goal might be. The tricky part is finding relevant data that you can kind of compare to. And Burnsville is somewhat unique, so it might be a little bit of a challenge. But I think it's a great question. And perhaps we want to incorporate something like that into the strategic framework, that we will work on specific goals and objectives for each one of those action steps or strategies.
Cool. I'll use some of that verbiage when Mayor Couts asks me these exact same questions when I present it.
Sure.
That's exactly what happened last time, so.
Good question.
I think you guys have done a really good job of trying to, really synthesize the large Stantec report. And I haven't gone through the details, but certainly scanning it really identified the issues and opportunities, especially where Burnsville is really, really unique. And I agree, it's trying to strike the balance between long-term strategic planning and actual measurable outcomes that you can get over an incremental period. But I do like, that when you extrapolated, the medical districts, the industrial parks, and specifically even focusing on workforce housing. And I do like that you actually left affordable out of there, just because that can be so subjective. And when you talked about looking at our manufacturing base, or what is the average worker, make on an hourly basis, what they may be making may, put them over the threshold of what may be affordable from a federal or a state standpoint. So looking at it holistically, just from a housing standpoint, I extrapolated that and looked at broadly for what you guys are trying to really put forward. And I like how you've synthesized all of the data from Stantec, which is really eye-opening in terms of really how unique Burnsville is, but the opportunities that could come from, where we are currently.
I agree, and it also feels like the way that the framework is put together is really well thought out, and with some of the data that I know that we have, it feels like there's opportunity to put some more concrete goals into it, just based on what we already have. Y'all can totally disagree with me, I just think I would like to see that.
I agree, especially in terms of the data collection. I love that you're honing in on that and using that to ground any recommendations that are coming forward, even with the overlay districts idea. I think it's really nuanced, but having that kind of nuanced thinking and so we can have the concrete data to move forward is exactly what we need.
Great.
I have a question, and I haven't gone through each of these bullet points with a fine-tooth comb at this point, but what I'm feeling as far as the trend is that there's a lot of internal work that's intended, a lot of work within the bounds of the city. Can you highlight just a couple of the elements that are more of an external work, a communicate out what is happening at the city as a magnet, because you can make it as great as you want within the borders, but if nobody really knows it, then you don't build and grow.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. A lot of it is intended to be internal work. We're a small but mighty team of 2, but these are all tasks that we can take on and we can move forward in the next 3 to 5 years. A lot of this is marketing related. I think we can do a better job of describing what our strengths are and getting that out to the community, what our city-owned properties are, what our vacant, privately owned properties are, and communicate that out and send that out as a beacon to new manufacturers or new businesses that are looking for a place in the metro. Partnering with the new and regional entities and industries and businesses goes beyond what we can do. I think our partnership with the Chamber is a great example of how we can kind of amplify our voice and demonstrate our flexibility as much as we can and try to bring in new business. But I think a lot of it is kind of marketing related. Those overlay districts and then the land surplus land areas is new information that we can get out there that I think people might not be aware of and kind of overlook Burnsville when it comes to choosing a new place to open up a shop or expand.
So it's almost an internal partnership that could be enhanced between you two who are doing the core of the work and then teams that are already part of communicating life out from the city.
For sure. Yep, absolutely.
Curiosity, Travis, the ballpark range, you talked about the kind of private parcels that are like vacant,
Yes.
undeveloped. How many would you say that there are?
So we haven't, this plan has not been approved.
Okay.
So we haven't done the work yet. But, so I'm responsible for the planning division within the Burnsville and, within the city of Burnsville and the neighborhood services division. And one of the onboarding tasks is we drive across the city and look at development opportunities and blighted properties and get a sense of what's out there. You know, back of the envelope, I would say there's maybe 30 properties, privately owned properties, 25 privately owned properties that are of value and for whatever reason are just not moving. And we don't know why. So that would be kind of the first step, is to come up with the list and then engage those property owners and say, what's holding you back? How can we help? What can we do to facilitate either a sale or a partnership with the developer to take advantage of that underutilized space? It's not a huge number, but it's, you know, it's millions of
Substantial
dollars of investment.
Well,
And in a
you know, my
highly
question would
developed
be,
city.
you know, you're talking about parcels, you know, how long have they been vacant? Number one, what are they zoned at?
Yep.
And has the planning commission got involved with this at all? You know, because if somebody's got, if I'm a private owner and I've got, you know, when you say parcel, I mean, is that a half acre, is that 10 acres? If I've got a sizable piece of property and I haven't been doing anything on that for 10 years or 20 years, I would think that the city would have a vested interest in forcing me to do something.
How we, Madam Chair, Commissioner, how we envision doing this is on a voluntary basis. So we wouldn't be forcing anybody to,
Well, you know, like the city of Egan did that, just that, where the outlet mall is, right? They took that by eminent domain.
and this would be more of a kind of a marketing, like we're here to support you if you want, if you choose to partner with us on how you might want to change that use in the future. There's been no discussion around, and perhaps we could strengthen the language in the framework, but there's been no discussion around requiring anybody to participate in it. It would just be us offering our services. You know, we talked to a lot of developers in the course of a week. Probably 2 or 3 developers come in and say, hey, I want to invest in Burnsville, where can I go? And we have a whole host of those privately owned properties that are a range of sizes. There are some highly valuable parcels that are, I want to, 8 to 10 acres in size that are vacant, that are underutilized in excellent locations. And but honestly, the average is probably about an acre in size. So we're not talking, you know, a huge housing development or something like that. But there's nothing there, and we need housing, and we want to support more economic growth. So what's the holdup?
There's also that piece where maybe the first step is what we're talking about here today, and we set this goal that the outcome is going to be that through our engagement, these private parcel owners move their private parcels, and then when that outcome is not met, then we look at more aggressive things that we might do. But I don't know that we need to jump in right away because the initial outreach might be successful on its own.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, I don't know that there would be political support to do something
I
like
was
that.
just gonna say, I could not see that flying in a city council meeting that exists today.
Yeah.
Not in-
That's just not the
You know,
taste.
if that was someone's goal,
Yeah,
then there would need to be this sort of paper trail
A
of
build-up.
everything that we tried first, you know?
Yep.
I believe the identification of opportunities from privately owned land, the couple of those different city-owned land plots that are available. I mean, that's purely what I think all of us envision, you know, when the gentleman from Stantec came and presented his report, they're really finding those opportunities for housing. Because like you said, there's not a lot of land available, you know, whether it's, you know, apartments or townhomes or starter homes. I mean, at least we can have the data to be able to say, okay, what type of housing, you know, could work well on those particular parcels.
Yes, and the benefit to the Stantec report is when we have a unique opportunity to redevelop a parcel which does not come available very often, or that property owner wants to finally allow a property to be redeveloped, we have a clear and new data that says we really need additional units. And in some cases, we're falling behind other communities in what they're building out. So there is that, that data has a lot of utility.
Any other questions for Travis or Beth? Thank you, Travis and Beth. So, are there any other updates prior
Can you go
to?
back one slide, Travis?
Oh, okay,
Perfect.
cool. Are there any other updates besides the meeting? Okay, I'm seeing that now, but not here. So
Yes.
the strategic framework feedback is welcome through June, it looks like. And then our next meeting might be on June 4th. Otherwise, it will be for sure July 9th. And we've had a commissioner resign, and I have never said his last name right. Can you do that, please?
Yes, Commissioner Newsom has resigned just due to personal commitments in his private life. But we certainly appreciate his service on the commission. Prior to being on the Economic Development Commission, he was also on the Code Task Force. So his commitment to helping serve Burnsville is notable, and we definitely appreciate that. You are correct. Additional feedback on the strategic framework will be available through June, so we'll circulate out the plan to you. So if you want to noodle on that a little bit more, and then as Travis mentioned, we will be engaging with our stakeholders and welcoming feedback from them as well. Travis also mentioned LAHA, Local Affordable Housing Aid. So we presented to the City Council work session last evening on kind of some ideas on how to utilize that funding. And we feel that the Economic Development Commission's feedback is also valuable on that. Being mindful of kind of the rules on when we have to utilize that funding and have it committed to programs would be our preference to hold a meeting with you all sooner than your regularly scheduled July meeting. So we have identified June 4th as a possibility. And so we will be working through that and getting that scheduled because feedback is important, and we view your role in that as very important. So that will likely be our next meeting, and then it's the tentative plan to also then cancel the July meeting, just to be mindful of everyone's time and commitments and things like that. So we will communicate that soon. But if there's not any other questions.
All right, I would like to request a motion for adjournment of our May 14th, 2025 Economic Development Commission meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a vote to adjourn? Everybody? Great. The meeting is adjourned.